Welcome, everyone. I'm Kevin Jeffries, President and CEO of the Chamber, and we're real happy you could all join us today and look forward to hearing from Dr. Sloan shortly. I'd like to start off by thanking our annual sponsors. Without their help and support, we wouldn't be able to bring you the programming and keep the doors open, and they've been very important to us especially during the they're always important, but even more so during this COVID time. So it's been really important. I want to especially thank Advent Health, Country Club Bank, CrossFirst Bank, Demdeco, Evergy, and Menorah Medical Center, who are our presidential sponsors. Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Kirk Sloan. He's the Chief Medical Officer at at St. Joseph Medical Center. My eyes went in the wrong place. Why do they do that? It's early, more coffee. He's at St. Joseph Medical Center. Dr. Sloan attended the University of Kansas School of Medicine and completed his residency at Mayo in internal medicine. He also leads St. Joe Hospitalists group, along with actively working as a hospitalist over at the hospital. Prior to joining St. Joseph Medical Center, he worked as a hospitalist and chief of medicine at St. Francis Health in Topeka. As Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sloan is responsible for managing the medical staff to provide safe, effective medical services to the community. His contributions have led to improvements in structure, process, and quality in nearly every area of St. Joseph's organization. He inspires others to serve the mission, vision, and values of St. Joseph Medical Center, providing a unique perspective with his clinical experience and commitment to delivering high-quality patient care. Okay, so for those in the audience today, please use the Q&A feature on Zoom to submit questions for Dr. Sloan, and we'll keep an eye on those, and we'll answer as many of those as we can as time allows. So Dr. Sloan, I think it is now your turn to share your screen. So welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. I'm Kirk Sloan. I work as the Chief Medical Officer at St. Joseph Medical Center. I want to take a little bit of your time this morning to talk about these vaccines that are rolling out for COVID. This is pretty exciting times, and I want to kind of give some more information and also take some questions about it. I think before I get started with that, let me take a second and just talk about our experience at St. Joseph Medical Center with COVID-19 and what we have seen and what we have dealt with. We have taken care of hundreds of patients with COVID at the hospital. We were right back at the very beginning of the pandemic. We started getting admissions. We have a dedicated COVID wing specifically for taking care of these patients. We also have COVID units in our intensive care unit as well. Like I said, we've taken care of hundreds of these patients. They have tended to be older. A lot of our patients have been in the 60, 70, 80, or even 90 range, as that population tends to get sicker quicker. Out of these patients, the vast majority, we get better. We get them off their oxygen, we get them back home. A handful of these patients, unfortunately, don't do so well. They end up intubated, they end up in our intensive care unit. They may end up with a tracheostomy, that's a breathing tube in their throat. And we eventually, work to get them to a long-term acute care hospital, which is a facility set up to try and get that out, get the tracheostomy out and get them back. And then, a small but, sadly unfortunate group don't make it, and that's unfortunately what we're dealing with here as a community and as a country. COVID can be very deadly. Like I said, we take care of a lot. Most of these get better and go home, but some don't. So I think it's something that we really need to take seriously, and our best bet, our best ability to get over this pandemic and to go back to life as we knew it before would be to get vaccinated. So soon, everybody will have a chance to take a vaccine that will protect them from getting COVID-19. It's free to everyone. Let's talk about some of the things that you need to know. So the vaccine itself, it's tested, it's safe, it's effective. It's amazingly effective, at least the two that are currently available. And the plan is that these vaccines will help us get back in control of our lives, back to the people that we care about, back to work, back to shopping, all those things that we want to do. A few of the things that I'm going to talk about are that scientists had a head start and thousands of volunteers helped with these clinical trials. These vaccines are safe, they've been very well attested, then they're very, very effective. You cannot get COVID-19 from the vaccine. Supplies are limited at first, and as they ramp up production, we should see more and more people getting their vaccines. Everybody has a spot to take your shot. The plan is that everybody in the whole country will get the vaccine if they so want it. To begin with, scientists had a head start. So creating this vaccine didn't just start, 9-10 months ago. The underlying mechanisms for creating this started years ago. We've been producing different kinds of vaccines for a long time. And the mRNA vaccines are really the holy grail of vaccines. And the ability to produce these mRNA really came out or started to be worked on with the SARS, if you remember that, 15, 20 years ago. There was a big scare about SARS going around. That's when they started working on these mRNA vaccines. And we'll talk a bit more about mRNA because it's really interesting and it's really cool, but it didn't just happen overnight. So these vaccines, they're tested for safety. More than 70,000 people volunteer to be in these clinical trials for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. So far, these vaccines have been shown to be 90 to 95% effective. This is amazing. I wish that our influenza vaccines could get anywhere near 95% effective. Most of our vaccines, 50, 60%, and we're real happy about it, but getting to 95 it's been amazing. There were no serious safety concerns identified in these clinical trials. There were a very small handful of people that did have some kind of a reaction, an anaphylactic type reaction. But this is very, very low. Almost every compound that we have will cause somebody to have a reaction. People have anaphylaxis to bee stings. People eat peanuts and they get anaphylactic reactions. I know physicians that if someone opens a box of latex gloves in the same room as them, they can't breathe. So eventually, once you vaccinate millions of people, which is what we've been doing, you will have a few people that will react to it because people will react to anything. But it's really rare, and the reactions have all been treated, and the people have done okay. The common reactions that most people are seeing are things like a sore arm, they get feverish, they get a headache, they feel kind of run down. This lasts a couple days and then goes away. And really what's happening is your body is building up an immune response, which is what we want. So what are messenger RNA vaccines? So in our cells, our DNA controls everything that we're going to be and all the processes that run. And it's the same DNA in every cell that you have. It starts when you're conceived as a baby, and that same material goes with you through all of your cells. It's a huge blueprint. The body can't do anything with the DNA itself. It needs kind of a messenger, or it needs something to tell it what to do with the DNA. So usually the DNA is all bound up and wrapped up in a little ball, a little wad in the middle of your cell in the nucleus. And when the cell needs to do something, it needs to make some protein, it needs to create something. It goes to the DNA and it unravels it a tiny bit and it makes a copy of it. And that copy is what we call mRNA. So this mRNA, the cell then uses that mRNA to make a protein out of, or make something, and then it destroys it. Because you can't have this mRNA hanging around, because if you did, the body would continuously produce the protein over and over again, and then that would, it would overload the cell, would not be what you want. So you want it to make the protein that it's there for, and then it gets rid of the mRNA. So there's two mechanisms by this happens. So mRNA is really fragile. It falls apart, it breaks all on its own. And then secondly, there's specific enzymes there that cut up mRNA if they find it and get rid of it. And I kind of think of mRNA as like writing a check. So if you write a check for, say, your car payment, and it goes to the bank cashes it, and then it gets rid of it. It doesn't cash it, leave it sitting around, see it again, cash it again, put it back on the counter. Oh, there's a check, I'll cash it again. If that happened, your bank account would be empty. So that the cell treats mRNA the same way. As soon as it uses it, it gets rid of it. And as I mentioned, mRNA itself is really, really fragile. It falls apart super quickly. And this has been why it's been so difficult to make a vaccine that uses mRNA, because every time we would create it and we would try to hold on to it and use it, it would just fall apart on its own. So the scientists and the doctors working on it, they found a way to use lipids, which are fat particles, to kind of coat it, to let it hang together just long enough for it to get in your arm, do its duty, and get rid of it. So the mRNA particles that are part of the vaccine, the way that works is when the vaccine is injected into your arm, these mRNA particles go inside of the cell, and they have a little blueprint that says make a protein. And this piece of protein, it's the spike protein found on the outside of the coronavirus. So it makes these little spike proteins. The cell sends them up to the outside, shows them off on the cell. Hey, look, I created these proteins like this mRNA told me to. And then your immune system sees that, and it becomes very angry. It says, that's a bad thing. And it goes and it looks at it, it creates antibodies to it. It goes and shows the killer cells, hey, you see this protein, this is bad stuff. Do not let this go around. And that process of your body building this up and that immune system, that makes us feel kind of crummy. It makes us feel run down, and some people get a little achy and feverish, and they get headaches. That's your body ramping up this immune response. So a couple things to remember about this. It does not affect the DNA. It doesn't go into the nucleus. mRNA can't become part of your DNA. It's just a messenger. It does not contain anything other than the spike protein, and that spike protein doesn't do anything. The spike protein on the outside of a coronavirus itself is what allows it to get into our cells, but the mRNA doesn't contain any other information. It only contains just this spike. Once the body identifies that spike as being bad and makes antibodies to it, then it can attack the coronavirus. And as far as we understand, there's no way for the coronavirus to get into our cells or to get into our body without the spike proteins. So it's important to remember that getting this vaccine is going to make you feel a little crummy, but it's not going to make you sick. It will not give you that. So, like I mentioned a couple of times, mRNA vaccines are expected to produce these side effects. 8 weeks of safety data was gathered in the trials to look at short-term reactions from this, and there were really no significant reactions to it. Some people, when they got the vaccine, they felt the little soreness in the arm, and they really had no other symptoms. I was vaccinated, as was almost all of our other providers, nurses, therapists at St. Joseph Medical Center, and almost all of the other hospitals in Kansas City. They've all been vaccinated. I know from personal experience, I got the shot. It felt like an injection in my arm. I didn't really notice anything for a few hours. Later that day, my shoulder kind of felt achy, kind of a little stiff. I kind of felt a little tired. I went to bed. I kind of tossed and turned. I woke up. My arm was really sore. I kind of felt not great. I took some Tylenol, went back to sleep. The next day, I felt okay. I was back to normal. These vaccines are set up to do second 2 doses. So you get the first dose, and then either 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, you'll get the second. The second dose is what really primes the immune system. The first dose gets it ready. The second dose really sets it off. So when I got the second dose, I definitely felt a little bit worse that day, a little more kind of just weak. The next day I still felt off. I didn't have any fevers, no chills. I just felt kind of tired. But the day after that, I was pretty much back to normal. A little bit of achiness in the shoulder, which went away pretty quickly. And since then, I've been fine. So the safety of these vaccines has been a top priority. The COVID-19 vaccines, they're held to the same safety standards as all vaccines are in this country. The FDA has advisory committees that reviews these applications. The advisory committee, they look at the safety, they look at the effectiveness and the data before they recommend being used. These are independent committees. They're composed of scientific, there's clinical people in it. And then they report to the FDA, which ultimately is the one that would make the decision about these vaccines being released for emergency use. There's also a program in place with the FDA and the CDC to monitor for safety and side effects of these vaccinations. I won't go through the whole thing, but there's V-Safe. Once you get a vaccine, you'll get text asking you, hey, how do you feel today? Do you feel sick? Do you feel bad? And the more people that fill that out, the better, because that gives us a lot of information. So far, there's been millions of people that have gotten these vaccines. So I think that that's really good information for them to look at to see if there's anything at all that may come up. We all follow this pretty closely. There's no significant or widespread issues at all that I've seen that have been related to the vaccination. So vaccines increase your body's natural ability to fight the virus before the virus attacks you. That's how we win. The virus loses it. So as I mentioned, the vaccine builds these spike proteins. These antibodies that your body builds to the spike protein are also it uses if the virus gets in your body. So you're already primed, you're ready to go. So if the virus invades, you go to the grocery store, you go to a restaurant, you inhale a particle of it, it gets into your lung, it gets into your system. You already have these antibodies that are flowing in your bloodstream. You already have all these cells that are primed. And when they see that spike protein, they don't know about the rest of the virus, but they know that spike is a bad thing, and so they attack it. And that's what we want, because we want the body to know what the virus is doing and we want to kill it off. These vaccines will not cause you to be positive on COVID-19 viral tests. These vaccines only mimic that spike protein for a short period of time. It's cleared out of your system. So if you take a test later and it does come back positive, then that would be considered an infection. There's the possibility that you may test positive on some antibody tests, though, because this is teaching your body how to make antibodies, and that's what we look at when we look to see if someone had a prior infection. So it's true, you may test positive on antibody tests, but you should not ever test positive on a COVID viral test unless you are actually sick. One of the emergency room doctors that works at St. Joe told me an interesting story. Now, as you know, the first dose of the vaccine gets you started, and the second dose is what really primes it to get you to that 95%. There's some thought that the first dose may get you 50, 60, something like that, and then the second dose gets you all the way. So the emergency room doctor donated blood about 7-8 days after he got the vaccine. And we'll talk about it in just a moment, that there's no contraindication to donating blood. If that's something you do and you get the vaccine, you can still donate blood, doesn't cause any issues. When you donate blood now, they do test for antibodies to see if you potentially were infected with COVID or got the vaccine. And he said that they called him back, and after 8 days, his body had already started making antibodies to COVID. So that's perfect. That's what we want. That's the whole idea here. People may be advised to get COVID-19 vaccine even if they've already had the virus. People can become infected with this more than once, and we've seen that in certain circumstances. Early on, the data showed that potentially that our immune response to the infection didn't last real long, maybe just a few months. And then now some later data is saying that maybe it's a little bit more robust. Maybe this lasts for longer than we thought. It may be related to just how sick you were. So if you were just, you had a mild cough and it went away and that was it, you may not build up the antibody response that you need. If you are real sick and down for a week, it's possible that you will, but it's hard to say. And at this point, I think the recommendation is that everybody should go ahead and get the vaccine. If you think you've been sick, or maybe you tested positive, 6 months ago, at this point, I would recommend that you go ahead and get the vaccine. So there's some rumors that I would like to go over and just mention and kind of talk about. The rumors that the influenza vaccine will also work against the coronavirus. The truth is it will not. These are two different vaccines. They're two very different viruses. They both are RNA type viruses, but they belong to two different families. One will not help the other. So if you've had the flu vaccine, that's great. I'm glad you got it. Keep getting it. But you need to get the coronavirus vaccine as well to be safe from coronavirus. Just to mention, in a typical year, more than 100,000 Missourians become sick from the flu and are hospitalized. So please do get the flu vaccine. So another rumor is that mRNA technology will tamper with your DNA. I already mentioned that. This is false. mRNA provides instructions to your cells to get a immune response going. There's no way that this gets into the DNA. The body doesn't have the ability to do that. I think we've said enough about that. Bill and Melinda Gates have created this so that they can track people with, 5G and chips in their body. There's no tracking chips inside COVID vaccine or any vaccine. Bill and Melinda Gates donate a lot of money to philanthropy for public health. They don't have anything connected to 5G or any other weird stuff. Another rumor is that mercury is in the COVID-19 vaccines and it's dangerous. So that's two kind of separate rumors. The first is that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, they don't contain any mercury. It's not used at all in any of the two vaccines that are currently being used. There are two different kinds of mercury that are out there in the world that humans may come in contact with. The methyl and ethyl mercuries. The methyl mercury is toxic to humans. That's not ever been used in vaccines. There's ethyl mercury, which is not very toxic. It's been used historically in very small amounts. It's called thimerosal or thimerosal. You've heard this big scare about autism in the past, and they wanted to link it to that. No studies have ever shown any link between that and autism. No studies have shown that that's been harmful at all. But again, that's not even used in the vaccine. Another rumor, I probably don't need to tell anybody, this virus is not a hoax. I've seen it kill people. I've seen it decimate families. I saw a situation with, it was a lady and a man. Both of them were in their 70s. Their children visited them for a birthday party. One of the grandkids had COVID. It infected both of the parents. They were both hospitalized within a few days of each other, both deathly ill. And unfortunately, both of them passed away. So, here was a family, a big family who all of a sudden, the mom, the dad, the grandparents gone, in within, a few weeks. So this was just horrible for the family. Completely changed everything for them. So, it's real. It's something that we need to take serious. In our country, the coronavirus is endemic, and what that means is it now exists to a high extent in just in the community. It's here, and it's here to stay. So there's only two ways that we can get rid of this. We will get to herd immunity, and you've heard that term. And what that means is that enough people are immune so it really doesn't pass around much. So the two ways that we'll get to herd immunity, one way is that either everybody catches corona and you either live or you die, or the second is you get vaccinated. And I think probably the better choice for us as a country, for us as a community, for us and all of our loved ones, is that we get vaccinated, and we try not to, go the first route, because eventually, in enough time, you will either get coronavirus or you'll get vaccinated. Those are really the only two options. It's too transmissible otherwise. Another rumor is getting COVID-19 vaccine will stop you from donating blood. It will not. You can still donate blood. Like I said, one of my doctors did. He already saw antibodies. There's not an issue with that. There's a couple of vaccines that are coming out potentially from AstraZeneca or J&J, and these you're going to have to wait a couple weeks before giving blood. And if you don't know what kind of vaccine you had, then you're supposed to wait 4 weeks. But for the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, those are the only two that have been rolled out. There's the only two available right now. Those don't affect your ability to donate blood. 2 shots are necessary. The first one gets you started. The second one really primes it. Depending on if you're getting the Pfizer or the Moderna, there's either a 3 to 4 week difference, between when you get your first and your second shot. So your privacy and your personal information, they're protected. Nothing in the vaccine can be tracked. Once these proteins this mRNA is in there, it's chewed up, it's gone. There's nothing there to show that you've had a vaccine. Any personal information about your vaccine and health, they're protected at all times. None of the hospitals are sending anything to CDC. It's HIPAA, it's safe. The vaccines are going to be available to all. There's a different plan depending on which state you live in, but these vaccines are being given to frontline workers, then sicker people, and then eventually they'll roll out to everybody. Here's the Kansas. Missouri is very similar. The first phase will be healthcare workers, residents in long-term care facilities, and then workers critical to pandemic response. Second phase, persons over 65, congregate settings like group homes, high contact critical workers. Then phase 3 would go to people that are younger, that have severe medical risks, and then other critical workers. Phase 4, anybody that's younger that has some medical risks. And then phase 5 would be everybody. And then hopefully eventually children. So children at this point there's no vaccines that have been okayed for children. 16 above is really going to be the cutoff. I do know that that's in progress, and I'm sure that will be rolling out. Where to get the vaccine in Johnson County. As you can see, the Johnson County Health Department, they provided vaccine to KU Med, Olathe, Advent Health. They're going to start booking these appointments. This is process. This is rolling out. I know a lot of people have already started to give vaccinations. There's some other information that you can find here. And that's at jocode.gov.org is where I would go to. This is all public. This is being provided for everybody. It's really, it's really important that we all do our part in protecting our country. It's important that we do, our best to protect our family. And I think really doing that is going to take us getting this vaccine and getting it rolled out big time. I really appreciate everybody's time. I'd be happy to answer some questions. I'm going to turn this back over and let me know any questions you have.
Dr. Sloan, excellent presentation. Thank you. People have been texting and chatting compliments and questions while you've been on.
Okay.
So
maybe
we might go through a couple of these questions here. I have over here on my other screen.
Okay.
One of the questions, quite a few of the questions centered around if you've already had it, do you need the vaccine, which you said yes, basically.
Yeah. I recommend it because at this point, it looks like some people that had a real mild case may not have built up enough antibodies. And I would recommend go ahead and getting vaccinated.
And both doses?
Both doses.
Not just the one. Okay. Now, here's another one, which is near and dear to my heart. Somebody asked about if you're scheduled to get the shingles vaccine, should you wait a while? Because the reaction to the shingles vaccine that I had a while back was very similar to the second dose you talked about. My second shingles vaccine, it was a lot more sore. I felt hot, similar, and sounds like it. What do you recommend as far as between?
I recommend that you put a few days between the two. Let your immune system kind of focus on one before it focuses on the other. So, and what I would probably recommend would be is if you can get the coronavirus vaccine, go ahead and get that, put that shingles off for a few days, wait till you're better, no fevers, no achy. When you're all kind of back to normal, then get your shingles vaccine.
Yeah.
Shingles is no fun. It hurts. It is not good, but coronavirus can kill you. So let's get that one first.
Yeah, I think that's more important. Yeah, shingles is uncomfortable, usually doesn't kill you. So
exactly.
Now, also in the same vein of people that have already had the coronavirus, do you think they'll have a more significant response to the vaccine if they've already had it?
They may, and anecdotally, I've heard that they may feel a little bit worse. And some of the thought is that people that had a stronger reaction, especially to the second one, maybe they did have a mild case of it.
And they just didn't know it. Yeah, they didn't know. Yeah.
And they didn't know.
So many people that I know, they go and get a test and they're positive, like, what? I did, maybe a pre-surgery test or something like that. And then they find out you have COVID and they're like, what? I didn't know
that's the best way to get it. If you get it and you're asymptomatic, that's all up to you. But
that does. Now, how about how long are we thinking this thing will protect you? Do we think it'll have to end up being an annual thing like the flu virus, or what do we think?
So far, we don't know exactly. That's a good question. The response, though, looks really robust, very strong. This 95% is pretty amazing. So the thought is this is going to last probably at least a couple years. So they'll be testing this as we go forward. With a lot of people, they'll be drawing, their blood and seeing how many antibodies they still have left around. And we'll get more guidance in the future. But so far, it looks like it makes a real strong response, and this may last several years. So I'm hoping it's not going to be an annual. Maybe it'll be every 2 or 3 years, something like that. So we'll see in the future.
Okay, I'm trying to get through these. Okay, going through that. Okay, we got another one here. Let's see. The length of time between a confirmed positive and then the vaccination date appear the severity of your action. You've kind of answered that, but not really sure yet, maybe.
Yeah, and we just don't have good data to kind of tell you. If you have the COVID, if you're positive for COVID, you really need to at least wait 10, 14 days before you get the vaccine. So let your body deal with that. Make sure you're over it and you're feeling okay before you get vaccinated. So if you get tested positive, I wouldn't go the next day and get vaccinated because you're
fighting it already. Yeah,
you're already fighting. Give your body the shot and then get it later.
Now, a timeline on phase 5, which is, I wish I had more issues because I'm, 6 months away from getting back. I'm 6 months away from the cutoff date. That seems very arbitrary to me. But, if you're in that phase 5, have you guys heard any estimates? Who knows when that'll be?
It's probably going to be late spring, early summer.
Yeah.
To be honest, but that's That being said, we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm from the government right now to get this rolled out.
Right.
So, I'm a little bit optimistic. They're really putting a lot into it. My hope is that we see a big ramp up, because certainly if we have the doses, we will do our best to get those into people's arms.
Yeah. And I know some of the places are starting to publicize clinics and the spots get zapped up quickly, I know. So
Yes.
now we had another question about the convalescent plasma. Do you all still need that to treat patients that have contracted it?
So yes, we still use that. It's fallen out of favor just a little bit, but plasma is still used in the hospital. It doesn't seem to be as helpful as we thought it would before, and part of that is because maybe when people get sick, their body will build antibodies against anything. Maybe it doesn't go after the spike protein. Maybe it goes after some other weird thing on the virus, and that may not be as helpful or robust in the future. And that's again part of the reason why I tell people, hey, go ahead and get vaccinated even if you've been sick, because sometimes your body may build up a lot of antibodies against a part of the virus that's not quite as helpful versus
Right.
spike proteins.
Well, I know that I have two daughters that are nurses in two different hospitals than yours, and they say
Wow.
that the survival rates seem to be improving too. Would that be what you're seeing also?
Yes, I am, and that's something that I'm happy about. And I don't know if what exactly to pin that on. We are better at taking care of these patients than we were at the beginning. We've got a lot better regiment. Maybe a lot of people that were susceptible to dying and getting sick did. It's hard to say exactly what part it is, but I'm definitely seeing better outcomes, less, people passing away, less really sick people. I think that's important.
That is good. Now we got another question here. Does it matter if you get the same vaccine for the first and second shot? And I think you did answer that you get the same one both times.
Yes,
Yeah.
you should get the same vaccine both times. There's just a tiny bit of research out right now looking at, if you don't have access to the second one, can you get, if you had Pfizer to begin with, can you get Moderna? And some of that is suggesting that you probably can, but the recommendation from the companies and from the CDC and the FDA are, get the same vaccine. And I kind of didn't talk about it, but when you get your first dose, they're going to schedule to get your second dose. And we're trying to make sure that people don't miss out. So we want everybody to get both doses.
Very good. Now, here's another thing that you kind of hear different information about. When we all started getting more of us with the vaccines, like my two daughters who have had theirs at the hospital, and you as well, do they still need to wear masks? When, where,
Yes, we still do, because it's a pandemic. If you've been vaccinated, you still need to wear your mask. You still should social distance. You should use good hand hygiene, all of that stuff. Just because, 95% is not 100%. I think once we have more people in the community that have been vaccinated or, have caught the virus, that are immune, I think that those restrictions will start to relax. But for right now, even if you've been vaccinated, you should still continue to wear a mask.
Yeah, it's a subject that's near and dear to our heart here at the Chamber, because we've suspended events for a time now, and we're certainly hoping to, our experience, we did some events during the, pre-November time period, and we wore masks, no handshaking, stuff like that. We never really had any problems, and they weren't, wall-to-wall people usually, but, I don't know, what's your thoughts on getting together if you're masked up and practicing proper procedures?
I think that that's fine. And I think that people don't need to huddle away hidden in their bedrooms, afraid to ever go outside their house, but we just need to be smart about it.
I'm showing this to my board of directors right after this. So, because I've been arguing that as well. It's like, we can start having small events again. And if we have a nice day, especially like yesterday, we'll have a little gathering outside. So
that's great, because outside is wonderful,
Yeah, great ventilation there.
Yes. Yeah. So, a good sized room with good ventilation, people being smart, not packing in together. People need to live and be out. And that's the important thing about this vaccine is we want to get back to our normal life. We want to get back to eating out. We want to go back to shopping. We want to go back to meeting our friends and all that. So this is really our best chance of being able to have a normal life again.
Well, we had another question come up, and I have heard this one as well.
Okay.
Can the vaccine or having had the virus cause infertility?
No. There's been absolutely no evidence that it can cause any infertility. They've actually had, part of the study, they asked for people that weren't pregnant for the females for the study, and then females got pregnant during the study, so that they were tracked and followed. But no, this will not cause you to be infertile. And also, it's being recommended that, if you're pregnant, you should still get it, because pregnant women are at higher risk of complications from COVID.
I've heard of a few of those.
Yeah, and so those are horrible outcomes that we do not want to have. So even if you're pregnant, it's still recommended that you get vaccinated.
Yeah, this is good. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions on the screen, and I've run through my list. I want to thank you very much on behalf of the chamber. I actually had one of we are recording this, as you know, and we're going to make this available and put it out on the chamber's YouTube channel. And because I've had several of our members text me during this saying, hey, is this going to be available so I can share with others? So certainly appreciate you helping with that.
Well, thank you.
Stay tuned. The chambers, we're trying to make the best of this crazy, somewhat socially distanced. I prefer to call it physically distanced, because we still need to be social and still talk to each other. But, we've got an event coming up on the 17th, one of our Leewood link ups. So be sure and tune in for that, any of you on the call. And I appreciate your time, Dr. Sloan, and your organization for allowing you to visit with us today, and look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.